If you're unsure how to simplify these expressions, then this video is perfect for you. I'm going to walk you through it step by step, teach you all the rules you need, and then apply it to some examples so that you get the idea. Let's start. So, welcome back to Solving for Salah. Today's topic of discussion is algebraic expressions. When simplifying algebraic expressions, an important thing to keep in mind is collecting like terms. So, like terms are terms which contain the same variables or letters to the same indices. So, xy and minus 2x are like terms, so that means they can be simplified. So, if you have 4ab minus ab, that would be the same as 3ab. However, x squared and 3x are unlike terms because the power of x are not the same. So, if we have 3x squared minus 2x, we can't simplify this any further because the first x is x squared, the second is just an x. Let's solve some examples so you understand the concepts better. Here are 4 examples. Let's start with the first one. So, for the first one, we have 4xy plus xy. So, we have xy on both sides and they're to the same power, so we can simplify. That's the same as 5xy. Moving on to the second one, we have x plus 3 plus 2x plus 4. So we have x and 2x, which are like terms, and 3 and 4 are like terms. So we can simplify. We'll get x plus 2x, which is 3x, plus 3 plus 4 is 7. And we can't simplify anymore. Moving on to the next expression, we have 2x squared minus 3x minus x squared minus 7x. So, 2x squared and negative x squared are like terms. And negative 3x and negative 7x are like terms. So, we can simplify. Let's start by the x squared. So, it's 2x squared minus x squared. That would give us x squared. And then we have negative 3x minus 7x. So they're both negative. So we add them. So we get minus 10x. Moving on to the last one, we have xy plus 2yx. Don't get confused by the different orders. They're still the same. So you can arrange them back as xy plus 2xy, giving us 3xy. Hopefully you got this, and now we can move on. Before we continue, here are some important information to keep in mind when dealing with algebraic expressions. So to start off, in algebra we agree to leave out the x sign between any multiplied quantities provided that at least one of them is an unknown letter. So for example, if you want to write 4x, we don't write it as 4 multiplied by x, we write it directly as 4x. Same as 3b, we don't write it as 3 times b. The second rule is to write numerals, numbers, first in any product. So it's always better to write 4x instead of x4. And it's always better to write 3ab rather than ab3. And finally, where products contain 2 or more letters, we write them in alphabetical order. So I don't think your teacher would remove points for that, but it's always cleaner and it looks better if the letters are in alphabetical order. So for example, 2BA would look a lot better as 2AB. 4EC would look a lot better as 4CE. These are just things to keep in mind. Now let's move on to some more information to keep in mind. So in algebraic products, the product of 2 or more factors is the result obtained by multiplying them together. So consider the factors minus 3x and 2x squared. Their product, negative 3x multiplied by 2x squared, can be simplified by the following steps. So first step is finding the product of the signs. Second step is find the product of the numerals or numbers. And third step is find the product or the variables of the letters. So if you have, for example, 4x multiplied by negative 2x squared, this can be simplified as, first of all, there's a positive and a negative, so the product would be negative. And then you multiply 4 times 2, that's 8. And then x multiplied by x squared, that gives us x cubed. You see, the first step is that you determine the sign. The second step, you multiply the numbers. Third step, you multiply the variables or the letters. Now let's move on to some examples so that you get a better idea. Before we move on, there are 3 types of algebraic expressions that I want to cover on how to simplify them. So the first one is if you have a into b plus c. So what you do here is you expand a times b and then a times c, giving you ab plus ac. Moving on to the next type, where you have a plus b into c plus d. So what you do here is you first expand a times c, and then a times d, and then b times c, and then b times d, giving you ac plus ad plus bc plus bd. And finally, when we have a plus b squared, or a minus b squared, or a minus b into a plus b. A plus b squared, that's the same as a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. For a minus b squared, that's the same as a squared minus 2ab plus b squared. And then finally, a minus b times a plus b, that's called the perfect square. It can be simplified as a squared minus b squared. So let me explain to you why these 3 could be simplified like this. So for a plus b squared, if you simplify it using the normal method, you'd get a plus b into a plus b. So you get a times a, then a times b, and then b times a, and then b times b. So you get a squared plus ab plus ab plus b squared, giving you a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. So that's the one I showed you before. And then a minus b squared gets you a minus b into a minus b. So you simplify it, you get a times a, and then a times negative b, and then negative b times a, and then negative b times negative b. So you'd get a times a is a squared, a times negative b, that's negative ab, negative b times a, that's negative ab, and then negative b times negative b, that's plus b squared, getting you a squared minus 2ab plus b squared, which is the same as the rule I showed you before. And finally, the perfect square, a minus b into a plus b. When you simplify it, you get a times a, then a times b, then negative b times a, and then negative b times b. So you get a times a is a squared, and then you get a times b, which is ab plus ab, and then negative b times a, that's negative ab, and then negative b times b, that's negative b squared. So when you simplify that further, you get a squared plus ab. Negative ab cancels out, so you get a 0, and then minus b squared. So here are the 3 rules explained to you. So for the first question, we have 2 multiplied by 5x plus 3x multiplied by 4x. So based on PEMDAS, we start with multiplication and then we move on to addition. So we have to multiply 2 times 5x and then multiply 3x plus 4 and then we add the products of each. So 2 multiplied by 5x, so you multiply 2 times 5, that's 10x, plus 3x plus 4, so you multiply 3 times 4, that's 12. So it's 12x, giving us 10x plus 12x. They're both like terms, so we can add them together, giving us 22x. Moving on to the next example, we have 3x squared plus 2x times 4x. So we multiply first multiplication and then we add the products together. So we have 3 multiplied by x squared giving us 3x squared plus 2x times 4x. So we first start with the numbers. 2 times 4, that's 8. X times x, that's x squared. So that would give us, they're both x squared, so they're like terms, so we can add them together. 3 plus 8, that's 11x squared. Moving on, we have 2x into 3 minus x plus x squared. So again, PEMDAS, we start with the brackets. In the brackets, we can't simplify because 3 minus x, they're unlike terms, so you can't simplify any further. And then you move on to outside the brackets, which is multiplication. So it's 2x multiplied by 3 minus x. So what you do here is you multiply 2x times 3 and then 2x times negative x. And then you move on. So we start off by 2x times 3. So 2 times 3 is 6. So it's 6x. And then 2x times negative x. So that's it. 2 times negative 1. So that's negative 2x. X times x is x squared. And then plus x squared from here. Giving us, so negative 2x squared and x squared are like terms, so we can simplify them together. So negative 2 plus 1, that's negative 1. So it's negative x squared. And then the 6x cannot be simplified with anything, so it stays the same, plus 6x. Moving on to the last example, where we have 4 multiplied by 3 minus x minus 10. So simplify this, you expand into the brackets, so it's 4 times 3 and then 4 times negative x, and then we subtract 10. So 4 times 3, that's 12, and then 4 times negative x, that's negative 4x minus 10 from the end. And then we look at like terms. So negative 4x, there's no other number with an x, so there's no like term. And then 12 and 10, they're like terms, so we can simplify them. So the negative 4x stays the same, and then we work on 12 minus 10, which is plus 2. And we can stop here. Now let's move on to the final set of examples. These are probably the most difficult ones, but if you are able to solve them, you'll probably be able to solve any example from any exam. So here are the examples. Let's start off with the first one. So we have 3 and then in brackets x minus 4 plus 2 multiplied by in brackets 5 plus x. So we start off by multiplying 3 times x and then 3 times negative 4 and 2 times 5 and 2 times x, and then we add the results of both sides. So it's 3 times x is 3x, 3 times negative 4, that's negative 12, plus 2 times 5, that's 10, 2 times x, that's 2x, plus 2x. So 3x and 2x are like terms, and negative 12 and 10 are like terms. So you can simplify 3x plus 2x, that's 5x, and negative 12 plus 10, that's negative 2. So the answer is 5x minus 2. Moving on to the next question, we have 2 into y minus 3 minus 4 into 2y plus 1. So as always, you need to first multiply 2 times y and then 2 times negative 3. And then we multiply negative 4 times 2y and negative 4 times 1. So starting off with 2 times y gives us 2y. And then 2 times negative 3 gives us negative 6. And then negative 4 times 2y, that's negative 8y. And then negative 4 times 1, that's negative 4. So we can simplify further because 2y and negative 8y are like terms, and negative 6 and negative 4 are like terms. So 2y minus 8y, that's negative 6y. And then negative 6 minus 4, that's negative 10. Now moving on to the next question, we have 2a minus a minus 2b. So a common mistake here is a lot of students, what they do is they just think that this is the same as 2a minus a minus 2b because there's no number before the bracket, so you don't multiply by anything. But you have to think of it as there's a negative 1 here, so you have to multiply negative 1 into the brackets. So these are not the same. So the actual answer is it's 2a negative 1 times a, that's negative a. And then negative 1 times negative 2b, that's plus 2b. See the difference? So here's plus and here it's a negative. And then you can simplify this further because 2a and negative a are like terms. So 2a minus a, that's a plus 2b. And we can erase this wrong answer. Moving on to the last question, we have x times x plus 4 minus 2 into x minus 3. So we have to expand x times x and then x times 4 and then negative 2 times x and then negative 2 times negative 3. So giving us x times x is x squared, x times 4, it's 4x, negative 2 times x, that's negative 2x, and negative 2 times negative 3, that's positive 6. So we can simplify further. So there's only one x squared, so they can't simplify that any further. There's 4x and negative 2x, which are like terms, and there's plus 6. So you simplify, x squared stays x squared. 4x minus 2x, that's plus 2x, and then plus 6. And this is it. Hopefully you understood the concepts. Don't forget to join me on the next video where I cover how to deal with products of two different factors and more complex products. And please comment down below if you have any question or any recommendation of future videos. Please like, subscribe and share if you found this video helpful. And thank you for watching. Goodbye.